Yo, what's up, guys? I had a friend of mine talk to me about just macronutrients, tracking macros, and that kind of stuff, and thought, oh, I should record a video about this and just kind of brain dump all of my current thoughts and philosophies about that. Um, so basically, I think when people talk about macros and stuff, the one thing that they don't start off with to frame the whole thing is your mindset going into it, which is a little woo woo and like, oh, love yourself and all of that. But it is true and it makes a big difference. And so if you're going into it thinking in sort of a punishing mindset of, oh, I don't deserve to eat this food, or I hate the way I look, or whatever it is, it's gonna be really hard. You can definitely do it, and you'll find people out there who do it and succeed that way. But it's gonna be really tough, and there's easier ways to do it, is what I'm trying to get at. And so if you're focusing in terms of a health aspect instead of a how I want to look, you're going to do a lot better. So for example, you could, when you're saying like, oh, I can't eat this food, you can reframe that to, I won't, or I'm not going to eat this food because, X, Y, and Z, for example, like health wise, I want to be able to play with my kids, or I want to be able to, as I get older, continue to have good joint health, or, whatever you want to ascribe to it that is meaningful to you. So no one can say, oh, this particular mindset or mind frame will work for you, because everyone's different. Everyone has different goals and different things that are important to them. So I think that's the first thing to think about. And then the other thing that plays a really big factor in this case, I'm going to be focusing on fat loss, but this would also apply if you're trying to build muscle, is sleep. And everyone knows that. It's really boring and no one wants to talk about it. But it is crazy, crazy important, because if you're not getting enough sleep, you're putting your body into a state of stress, basically. You can think of, if thousands of years ago when you were a caveman, the only time you wouldn't sleep is if there was some sort of threat, or there's a flood, or you don't have enough water, or whatever it is. There would be a big reason for you not to be sleeping. Whereas nowadays it's so easy to just, I want to stay up and watch some Netflix, or do this or that, stay out with some friends, whatever it is that, it's not life threatening. Humans haven't been able to just create light out of nowhere. It's always been with, maybe fire, but even then that's really expensive because you're burning wood, burning resources. So anyway, I digress. Basically, your body is not built to not have sleep. And so when you lose out on sleep, it thinks there's something wrong, and it's not going to want to lose fat, because that means you're losing potential calories and fuel for your body. And if you're in a rough situation, your body thinks we might need to save that energy for later. And then it's also not going to want to build muscle, because that's an expensive thing to do calorie wise. Muscle takes a lot of calories to maintain, and also a lot of calories to create. So there's no point for your body to want to build muscle, even if you're working out, if you have poor sleep. Obviously, different people need slightly different amounts of sleep, and I'm not saying that you can't get away with losing fat or building muscle while being underslept, but you're fighting an uphill battle. And so focusing on getting enough sleep, and then also consistent sleep, as in consistent bedtimes and wake up times, will make a really big difference. You can think of when you go traveling, you might land in a new time zone and still try to get those 8 hours of sleep. But since you're going to bed and waking up at different times, you're still going to feel pretty zonked, because your body's just not used to that. It's used to its regular circadian rhythm. If you want to kind of read up or learn more about that, I would recommend checking out Dr. Huberman, Andrew Huberman, and specifically Matt Walker. Those are two places where you can find a lot of information on sleep and the best ways to get better sleep and all of that. But you could stick with get the 80-20 by just don't eat and drink a ton before bed, and go to bed wake up at a consistent time, and not a ton of caffeine after 12ish, assuming you're going to bed at typical times. And what was the last one? There's one other thing. It doesn't matter. Everyone knows the typical things. You just don't do them, including myself, which is okay, but you got to get better at it. So sleep, really important. I think there's been studies that show that if you're not getting enough sleep, specifically for fat loss, the weight that you lose, if you're trying to lose weight, the weight that you lose when you're not getting enough sleep mostly comes from losing muscle and not losing fat, which is the exact opposite you want. When you lose fat, you want to be losing fat and keeping or maybe slightly gaining muscle, and not losing both at the same time. Otherwise, you just end up looking mostly the same, but just a smaller, but still fat version of what you are currently. So sleep, really important. Mindset, also really important. Next thing I want to get into is tracking versus like intuitive eating. Both work, but one is slower than the other, but intuitive being slower. So I think obviously if you have any past of eating disorders or whatever, I haven't experienced that, and I don't have any close friends who experienced that, so I can't really speak to that too much. But from what I understand, talk to a professional, and you'd probably want to lean more towards the intuitive eating side of things, which would be making small changes to what you're eating, opting for example, like if you have ground beef that's 80-20, lean to 20% fat, swap that out for a lean ground beef. Little things like that you can slowly tweak, and slowly you'll eat less calories and lose fat. And I guess leading to that, calories are the only thing that matters. Everyone can say whether like different diets or different things or yada yada yada, but at the end of the day, it's how much did I eat, and then how much am I expending. And expenditure doesn't just have to come from exercise or cardio. It can come from just walking around or sitting on the couch. So there's a bunch of different ways that intake versus outtake can be measured, but at the end of the day, it does all come down to calories. And if anyone's trying to tell you otherwise, either they don't understand or they're explaining it wrong, incorrectly. That they're not very good at explaining. It's basically what it comes down to. So yeah, with those two things, tracking versus intuitive eating, I would recommend going with tracking, just because it gives you a better idea of food in general. You're more knowledgeable and more informed citizen, I guess you could call it. But here's the crazy thing, is that even with tracking being the faster, the rate of progress that you're going to have is way slower than what I think most people would think. For example, let's say I weigh 150 pounds. Typically, you're not going to see sustained fat loss of more than 1% of your body weight lost each week. You can definitely get above that, but you start to run into the territory of unhealthy fat loss and other bad things happening to your body, mainly to do with your metabolism. Your body will ramp that down, and basically just thinking that it's in a starvation mode and trying to burn less calories, which means you're always going to be in this cycle of eating a ton of less calories. Your body's trying to pare down on that, so then you need to eat less calories to sustain that same fat loss. So 1% of your body weight lost per week is the typical calculation or the typical recommendation. So if I'm 150 pounds, lose 1%, that's 1.5 pounds per week. And then let's see here, let's get into specifically what is a calorie, what is a micronutrient, what is a macronutrient. So calorie, just a form of measuring energy, is all it comes down to. And you can Google and get the exact way that a calorie is measured, but all calories are the same. People like to say that they aren't, or there's differences, or yada yada yada. Technically, there can be differences in what comes with the calorie, but each calorie is the same. Whether you get 100 calories from an apple or 100 calories from a Snicker bar, they're the exact same number of calories. There's no difference between the two. Now, for example, with the apple, there's going to be fiber that comes along with that. Fiber is very filling, so you will feel more satiated and full longer with that versus a Snickers bar. So there's that, but the actual calories are the same. And then micro and macronutrients is, when people talk about macros, they're talking about protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are all essential. and you're going to want a balance of all three. Yes, there are plenty of no or low carb diets, or keto being no to low fat, but all things being in moderation, I think is the best way to go. And if you're just getting started, the best thing to do is to just do typical balance, which in that case, you'll want to get about anywhere between 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, somewhere in that range. Typically, the higher the better, but definitely getting 150 grams of protein per day for a 150-pound person, that's a lot of protein, especially if you're just starting out and you're used to not tracking or not eating a ton of protein. In terms of carbs and fats, you can look up, and there are recommendations for the lowest. You'll want to go with that, but probably what I would do is just you're going to get the number of calories that you get from your protein, and then the rest of the calories I would split half and half between carbs and fats, and then you can mess around with that and see what you like better. I typically like eating more carbs because I like carbs. I like pancakes. I like breads and all that kind of stuff. But if that's not your thing, then you can skew more towards fats. The way to calculate that out is you can go anywhere and get a idea. You can go anywhere online and get an idea for how many calories you should be eating per day. That's just a rough estimate. That's not going to be your end-all be-all, and you'll definitely want to adjust based on your activity level and whatnot. And the way to do that is to start tracking everything that you eat. So you'll put in whatever that caloric number you get. There's a bazillion trackers out there. It doesn't matter which one you use. There's bazillion websites that you can figure out your maintenance calories, which is the calories that if you just ate that going forward, you wouldn't gain or lose any fat, provided your exercise level and all that stays the same. You can find lots of different websites that will guesstimate on that. Probably doesn't really matter which one you use. They're all going to be off. Everyone's different. Even you're going to be different from time to time, because there might be times when you're exercising a ton and there might be times when you're not. So pick one, doesn't matter. Find your maintenance calories. For me, my maintenance is, I think, hovering about 2,300 calories, or 2,300 calories. If you want to gain muscle, you want to add on an extra about 300 calories. And if you want to lose fat, you'll want to subtract about 300 to 500 calories, depending on how fast you want to go. And also just depends on how uncomfortable you want to get. It is very uncomfortable to get down to the 500 calories less than your maintenance. You're going to be hungry. That's just how it goes. There's definitely going to be days when you're not hungry, but there are definitely going to be days when you are hungry. You're physically eating less than what your body needs, and as a result, your body uses its fat stores instead. So there are going to be some times of discomfort. Anyway, basically, you'll want to get that maintenance calories that you got from whatever online calculator you used, punch it into FatCircuit, MyFitnessPal are probably the two most common ways to track, and then subtract or add your calories as needed. You've got your whatever your target in terms of protein is, that being 0.7 to 1 gram of pound per body weight, or per pound of body weight. And then from there, you can calculate how much carbs and proteins, and each of these apps will help you do that to keep the total number of calories within your limit. But if you were to do this on paper, you would add up the total number of calories from your target protein. So let's just say it's 150 grams of protein you're shooting for. Each gram of protein is going to be 4 calories. So you would subtract that out of whatever your goal intake of calories is for that day, and then you're left with, let's say, 1,000 calories. Fat, every gram of fat is 9 calories, which is much higher than protein, and as well as carbs, because carbs are the same as protein, 4 calories per gram. So you want to play around a little bit there with how you want to distribute that. And that's just up to each person. It doesn't really matter. You will definitely need some amount of fats in your diet. Those are definitely essential. You can get away with less carbs, but humans run better off of carbs, and you'll enjoy yourself a lot more if you stick on it. So I wouldn't worry too much about getting those low unless you really like to have a heavy fat concentration in your diet. In terms of just regular, I talked a little bit about keto and low carb diets and all that. All these diets do is they're a way to try to reduce your caloric intake. There's no magical food or magical diet that changes anything. People talk a lot about intermittent fasting. I do that. I think it's great, but it doesn't change anything unless you actually eat less. So the idea is you constrain your eating window, and then it's harder to eat a lot of food in a small amount of time. So typically you'd be able to eat less during the day without tracking. Can you override that? Absolutely. If you go around and eat a ton of fat, we just talked about how fat has 9 calories per gram versus protein and carbs, which are 4 calories per gram. Fat's way more concentrated in calories, and so if you're eating a lot of nuts and other fatty foods and whatnot, you'll pretty easily negate any of those benefits of trying to constrain your eating window. You'll just be able to eat more calories in that eating window, and then you'll say, "Oh, intermittent fasting doesn't work." Well, it's not a be-all, end-all. Tracking your calories is probably the only way to say for sure that you're in the clear or not in the clear. All the other diets and stuff are just a way to hopefully try and reduce your calorie intake, but it's not guaranteed. Now, definitely you don't have to track your whole life. Once you kind of get a hang of it and you know about how much different foods, about how many calories are in different foods, whether that's a whole food like a potato or an apple, like any apple can be about 90 to 110 calories. Okay, sweet. As much you'll become much more intuitive with that kind of thing, and then just guessing on different foods out there. So you definitely don't have to track for forever. And once you get to whatever your goal is, there's a lot less work to stay there. You don't, right now, you can think whatever your current weight is or what you're at right now, you don't really think about that. And you don't have to work really hard to stay where you're at. It's the changing that's really hard. So once you get to your goal, you can kind of let off the gas a little bit, and it will be much easier to maintain than it is to physically move yourself to a higher or lower body fat. One last thing I wanted to touch on is metabolism. This is something that if you've already tried to, for example, if you've already tried to lose fat before, you probably have tried to eat less. If the amount of calories that your body naturally burns, i.e., your metabolism, how fast it goes through calories, that can vary between person to person. That's why you have these people who like to say, "Oh, I'm a hard gainer," and they can eat a lot of food and it just doesn't affect them. Part of that can be if they're moving around a lot more, but also just some people naturally just sitting around doing nothing burn more calories than someone else, even if they're around the same height, weight, size person. And then also each individual person will have a variance of where their metabolism sits. So for me, sitting at 2,300 calories to maintain, that might go up or down depending on the amount of sleep I'm getting, how much I'm moving around in terms of walking or just bouncing my legs, sitting around the house, a variety of different factors. I honestly don't understand all the factors there, but that can jump around by, I think, 500 calories, somewhere in that range. So it's a pretty big difference, and that's enough to make a big difference in your fat loss journey. So you want to be making sure that your metabolism is in the upper threshold of whatever your metabolism range is. And the best way to do that is to have a lot of muscle. So whether you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to just lose fat and, I don't want to be bulky, you still want to be lifting, to some degree. You still want to be making sure that your body isn't trying to pare down and remove muscle as you're eating less. And so any type of resistance training doesn't have to be specifically weight training. It could be body weight stuff. It could be calisthenics, that's body weight. It could be anything that is not cardio, anything that you're resisting against, bands even, that will help to keep the muscle that you have on and make sure that your metabolism stays higher and your body doesn't drop your metabolism as you're trying to eat less calories. So I think that's probably a fairly decent rant on how this all works. In terms of how to track all of this in your actual app and stuff, you'll want to go to Food Scale. That's probably the easiest way to do that. And then you're just going to weigh everything. And it sounds like a lot, but once you get used to it, it's not. Like anything, there's a learning curve, and then it gets very easy. And so there, even inside the app, if you want to make a whole recipe, you just weigh out your ingredients as you go. You know, if you have a thing of yogurt that you're adding, you put the yogurt container on the scale, scoop it out, and you'll see how much how much yogurt you poured out. The other option would be to put whatever your big mixing bowl is on top of the scale and then add the yogurt to that. It doesn't matter how you do it, and you'll kind of get a feel for what you like and what you don't like. With the Food Scale, you'll want to make sure that there is a way to zero it out. So if I put something on the scale and it says it weighs, however many grams, I should be able to hit a button and have it recalibrate to that being the zero mark. That will help a lot. And then after that, like, you can scan nutrition labels. All the apps make it very easy to do that. So if you're not into cooking and you just want to buy, either prepackaged food or just food like yogurt, fairly minimally processed, but you're still got that label on it, makes it really easy to track that way. So that's how I would go about losing fat, is making sure my mindset is right, figuring out what my maintenance calories is, dropping by 300 to 500 calories, figuring out how much protein I want to eat, entering that into whatever app of choice. Fat Secret and MyFitnessPal are the most common. There are other apps out there that do this as well. And then each of those apps will help you figure out how much fat and how many carbs to eat during the day. And then after that, it's just being consistent. That's, as annoying as it is, it's really easy to mess up the consistency part and have it really slow down your progress. I think the best example is to think of it as like a car, and that accelerates really, really slowly. And so you could have a whole week of eating well, and the car is slowly accelerating towards losing fat. But if you have one day that's off, you'll lose all of that acceleration, and you'll have to start over, so to speak, the next day, and then you'll be trying to accelerate again towards fat loss. But if you have 2 weeks in a row where you have hit it perfectly, you've got all that momentum built up. So basically each day will go a lot better in terms of fat loss by the momentum that you've built from the past week or two. So it makes a really big difference if you can go 3 weeks, 4 weeks with no cheat days or no falling off of your diet. So I would say consistency is much more important than trying to eat way less. So for example, if you're not able to consistently eat 500 calories less, and one day you're eating 500 calories less, and the next day you're back up at whatever your maintenance is, but then the next 2 days you're down at 500 calories, it's really going to mess up your progress, and your body weight's going to be all over the place. Versus if you're just consistently at 300 calories, you'll see a lot more progress, and it'll be much less of an issue. I forgot to mention, with tracking all this, one thing that's really nice to see is not just your weight on the scale, but your body fat percentage. I just have a cheap scale from Walmart. I think it was $25. And it's got 2 little metal strips on either side that you stand on. And it puts just a weak electrical pulse through the bottoms of your feet. And it gives a guess on your body fat percentage, which is totally not accurate at all, but it should be consistent, which means that you can track whether it's going up or down. So I think that would be the best way to track that. Track your calories, track your weight and your body fat percentage, and then probably I would weigh yourself every day as well as tracking every day. And you're only going to be looking at the trends. You don't care about what your weight or your body fat percentage is on any given day. And then whatever you've locked in for your diet or your calories, don't change it for 1 to 2 weeks, right? Even after 1 week, if you're seeing, oh, my weight's staying the same or maybe even slightly going up, just stay at it. It takes a long time for your body to actually make any changes that you make, for your body to actually react to them. So you'll want to wait 1 to 2 weeks before you say, oh, I'm going to drop my calories more, or I'm going to do this or do that. And yeah, I think that's it for the video. We're already at 25 minutes, so it's kind of a longer video. Sorry about that, but hopefully this is helpful.